Hey friends, it is another Friday, and you know what that means. We've been building wins all week, but my favorite time is when we get to build wins together on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and today is going to be no different. I've got a great friend, a new friend, relatively new, that I've met, Jeff Forrester, and we are going to chat about many things, including his new book and all things performance coach related, trainer related, and you're going to love this guy, so don't go away. We'll be right back. Is this the real deal or what, buddy? Huh? Look at that thing.
I like it. I like it.
You know, I'm Jeff. Welcome. I was getting all excited. I was already going to start talking about the book. I was so excited. I've read half of it, but so
Good
welcome
deal.
to the show, my friend. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're getting ready for Hurricane Ian right now. So by the time we are finished with this, hopefully it will be past us.
Yeah, where is it now? Because I'm not back in Florida yet. You're in Orlando, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
It looks like we're going to miss everything but a few tropical winds in Naples, even though I'm not back there right now. But does it look like it's coming at you, or is it going to go north of you a little bit?
Yeah, so it's supposed to hit around Tampa, maybe just a little bit north, and then depending on which way it turns, it could go straight up. So we're going to get the bad side, which is the right side, all the way up, and we'll see, because Irma did the same thing about 5 years ago, where we didn't know where it was going to go. We thought it was going to hit Tampa, and then next thing you know is it's coming up through the middle of the state. So
right. Yeah, I remember we again, and Irma was still in Michigan, but remember watching it pretty intently as it came across in Naples and Marco Island and blasted up the center of the state. So that's always something you think about and wonder about, right?
Nope, always. Well, it's just like when you're dealing with sales, there's something going to come along at some point that you've got to get prepared for.
Exactly. So, well, listen, thank you. And as I mentioned in the brief intro, we've become friends here just recently, and it's we had a great conversation on the phone the other day, and I'm just really pleased that we're going to chat about your book and everything else you guys got going.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I look forward to it. I really enjoy watching what you put up on a daily basis and and what you share, because it's one of those things that, as we talked about, sales can be such a lonely business, especially when you're outside sales and you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate the message that you send, and I can't believe that you don't think it should be colder than 77 ever, but
ever. That should be the low at 10 o'clock at night. Midnight, 77.
Well, with no humidity, possibly, but I don't know.
I do actually feel that way, Jeff. But if I'm brutally honest, which I try to be, that was to tweak a few of my northern friends that think that it's anything over. Well, Wes is one of them that you met. My friend, my buddy, my pal. Producer director Wes Wyatt is one of these guys that, hey, don't shut me off, Wes. Leave me on air. He's one of these guys that thinks anything over like 57 is like hot. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with you people. But I do enjoy the hot weather and the warm weather. I don't mind it. So, and it's cold up here. It's like I went for a walk this morning earlier, and it was 58 degrees, I think, when I went out. And cold.
I can't comprehend it.
It was so cold I couldn't even do a walk and talk because I couldn't speak. It was that cold. But anyway, well, thank you. I appreciate it's good to know. I enjoy the whole virtual world that we have got involved with, and maybe as we move forward during our conversation, we'll chat about that a little bit along with your book. But before we get really rolling too fast, who is Jeff Forrester? Let's get down and dirty here. Who in the heck are you?
All right. Wow. Well, I'll try to give it.
This is where you lie and make up stuff. No, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I'll do brief because I know that we don't have all day. Well, I was raised in a sales family. So from my grandparents to my father, my great granddad started a car dealership in 1926, and it still exists today. So that part and my dad got the entrepreneur bug and bought a toy store, and so he did that. And then we were raised in small business, and then he passed away from lung cancer my senior year in high school. So I took over the business. So we were in retail sales. I got started early on in sales. And then when I finished college, and go Gators, I just knew that I didn't want to do the things that I saw him do. And that was no vacation, no benefits, no savings account, because it's the ugly side of entrepreneur, not the social media side that everybody gets to see. And so I went into outside sales. So I started in technology sales first. And then from there, the last 22 years was in healthcare sales. And so I did that until December of this past year when I was laid off. And my wife, Tammy, of 16 years, who I love dearly, and I made the decision that I would venture out and try to work on doing some things on my own. So it's, creating concrete consulting as well as getting into real estate. And, through those, it's been a wild adventure so far of 2022. We have our oldest son, Deuce, is 14, and then our daughter, Lorelai, is 12. So between all that, keeping me very, very busy.
I was going to ask you what you do in your spare time, but apparently there is none.
No. So that's why I wrote the book during COVID. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have gotten it done.
Well, it is funny you say that, because I was just talking to Wes before you popped on, and he and I are both working on books, and it's hard to find the time to just sit and do it, right?
It is. And my coach, I had hired a coach to help, oddly enough, not even write my book. He was going to help me create my website. And from that, he also writes devotional and coaches authors. So his name's Adam Davis, an incredible guy. And so the way he had to break it down for me easy. And so I like things chopped up in small, attainable measures. So just like with goal setting. Mm-hmm. So he's like, if you do 30 minutes a day, 300 words a day, you can write a 25,000 word book in under 6 months. Yeah. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, if I can find 30 minutes to sit down and write. And so, like I said, as it started for me right at the beginning of COVID, so 30 minutes could easily turn into 45 minutes, an hour. But then there were some days I sat here and stared at the screen and just couldn't figure out what to write. But it was a wonderful process. And I'm glad that you and Wes are writing one. And I encourage everybody, regardless of what their career is, to write a book, because of the process that you now have legacy that can go and live beyond you, because we have so many stories and so many things that we've learned along the way that if you don't share those, you're only one generation away from those going away and nobody ever learning the valuable lesson that you learned. And so tell the imposter syndrome that is circling in your head to hush and write it, because somebody will write it, because or somebody will read it, because that was the thing that I struggled with, is like, I'm just Jeff from Orlando. Why would anybody want to read my book? And I'm approaching 500 copies in 2 years. So nice. It's incredible. I'm excited about it.
Oh, that's awesome. It's awesome. I can tell you, we got it up on the screen there. I'm about halfway through. I was going to read it all last week, but I was hitting the road pretty typical road warrior week last week, right? Out the door at 5 a.m. and back in the room at 10:30 at night. So I didn't get a lot of reading time last week, but very well done and worth the read. So congratulations on that. So been in sales forever. I love that, because that's been my gig, right? And I can't imagine doing anything else. Are you practicing one of the things that I talk about a lot, which is love what you do and do what you love? I think you are, but is this the life's work from a profession standpoint, anyways, of Jeff Forrester? Sales. This is you.
Sales, and I would say leadership and development is more. I get more enjoyment out of it than just the sales specifically. Mm-hmm. I love to see people succeed and to accomplish more than they think that they can. And that's what I really, really love. So it's the training, the leadership side that I enjoy, because I like to be in the background and see other people succeed more than me succeed. So as an individual contributor, I've been relatively successful. As a leader, and when we're talking about rankings and those type of things, I've been really successful, because it's not because of me. It's because of pouring into the people around me and wanting to see them do better than just by hanging on to their coattails then I had success as well. And that's the way I like it. I don't like to do things for me in front and just continue to encourage and not even inspire, because I think it's just getting people to dig in and unleash their own potential and figure out ways that they can be successful. It's the old story of you can give somebody a fish and they eat for a day, teach them to fish and they eat for a lifetime. That's what I like to do, is inherently help people learn how to fish.
Love it. That's awesome. So besides the book, which we're going to get into and maybe drill down a little bit on the book and what you learned and what the book's about and whatever else we talk about, but you, besides being an author, you're a speaker, you do the training that we talked about. I think you consider yourself and we just hit on a performance coach, right?
Yes. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what all that entails, what people would expect to learn. Why should somebody look up Jeff Forrester if they're in the world of I guess really doesn't have to be just sales, right? It can be any profession, right? That needs some help with performance and leadership and goal setting. Tell us what hiring Jeff Forrester would be like. What am I going to get if I hire Jeff?
Okay, you're going to get a lot of questions.
Okay.
And that's the difference to me between a coach and an instructor. Like, I'm not going to instruct you how to become a fantastic salesperson. What I do as a coach is I like to dig in and ask tons of questions and allow people to find the answers. And then if there's an occasion where I have something to recommend and suggest, I'll ask permission, because my job as to coach is to continue to ask questions and help someone build confidence in their own decision-making process. And that's usually, I know for me, that was, and it continues to be one of those areas that I am always not as confident in as I could be, because you make a decision and some people are good. They make a decision and they're fine with it. And whether it's a good decision or a bad decision, they continue to move forward. But a lot of people, including myself, is many times you'll either not make a decision or you'll make a decision and then waver afterwards because you worry about it. And so what I like to do, and this is where the performance part comes into it, is help people get a better understanding of, okay, why do they feel that decision wouldn't go well? And a lot of times it could be lack of preparation. It could be lack of vision, lack of goals. So there's a lot of things that could come into it that they know the answer. They're usually just not willing. And this includes me. I'm definitely preaching to myself, is that it's just saying it verbally. And so a coach is different, because what we look at doing is not looking backwards at what you could have done and how you could have managed these things prior, but what can you do moving forward to change the course if you're not comfortable with the course that you're on. And I love to connect with people. I know you said I'm a speaker. I have done speaking, but I really enjoy the one-on-one and small group coaching, because you can get intimate with people. You can ask questions, and then you start seeing the light bulbs come off, not because of something that I've said, but because the relationship creates such power for the other person. And I learn the whole time. So
Sure.
over the years, that's why I know what I know, is because I've listened to other people. And that's what I really enjoy. And that's what somebody could expect if they were to work with me.
And a point you made, I think, is very good. Is a lot of coaches, or what people have experienced with coaches, probably is the constant. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to give you a 10-step program. I'm going to give you this. We've all heard the 12-step close, in in-home sales. I'm going to give you the 10-step close. I'm going to tell you, step by step, right? But I liked where you're coming from with listening, because I think everybody's different, right? I'm different than you. We're all different than Wes. Everybody's different. So what works for you may not work that well for me. But if you and I are working as you're my performance coach, what I'm hearing you saying is, by you asking enough questions, I'm going to develop my own plan under your tutelage and leadership, and bringing it out of me that I might never get if I'm not sitting and talking to you. Did I nail that one or what? That was
You nailed it. Because a good example is, I love lists and checklists to where I can check things off. If I tried to get my wife to do a checklist, forget it. She just doesn't operate that way. but she has other things that works well for her. So if I just tried to tell her, okay, we need to go by this checklist, she would not be receptive of it whatsoever. And it would end up creating more problems than not, versus, okay, how do we get this done? Like, how can you accomplish your goal? And then working through, and then there's accountability to that, as if you come up with it, that wasn't my idea, that was your idea.
Well, I think that's a great part of that, Jeff, because if I'm working with you as a coach and you come up with it, I've got a fallback, which is, that's all your fault, Jeff. You told me to do it and it failed. It's not me, it's you. Which is a beautiful thing with what you're doing, is if it works, I feel good about myself, right? I'm a hero to myself, and I'm going to continue to expand on that. If it doesn't work, again, I got to look inwards and say, what did I do wrong? Because I committed to this. It was my idea, and I didn't follow through. I wasn't successful. So I think that's a spot on way of coaching, in my opinion.
And it's the way I've led teams, is that because I've worked for people who, this is just the way it is. You do these things and you check these, boxes off, and then you move forward and you go. And have you tried this sales thing? Have you tried that? Well, you try it, but then it's so insincere because it's just not who I am. And so allowing people to be themselves, but to not be, I don't know, just lazy about it. Right. Is allow yourself to shine through, and then coaching them through how to talk to themselves. I mean, that's a critical component to the book, is the internal and external communication of what do you say in between your ears, but then what comes out of your mouth. And being in sales forever, every word is precious. Right. And you can have impact in a positive nature or a negative nature with just one simple word. Right.
I love the checklist part too, because I'm a list maker. I do it on a notepad sometimes, but I've become I do it in my notes on my phone or my iPad, and I love one of my favorite icon. Well, okay, maybe not my favorite, because I do like the laughing faces and stuff, but my favorite icon is the little green check mark. Right? There's something empowering of making the list, but there's something really empowering about checking that off, right? It just makes you feel like you got something done, as long as you're not putting junk on there that you're going to do just to check them off. But I like lists, but you're right. It's funny. My wife's just the opposite with the same thing. I don't want any lists. We'll just do it. Well, no, I want, because see, after all these years, I've learned one thing about myself. If I don't make a list, and if I don't put it in my my calendar on my iPhone, I can guarantee you this: it probably won't happen, and it
Amen.
likely won't happen when I said it would happen, right? And I know that about myself. So it's and I think I liked where you're coming from, is if I talk to you long enough as your athlete, your student, or whatever you want to call it, right? Then I'm developing that myself. You're just going to back it up and give me the little nudge, the little push we need. So I like that. That's good stuff. So COVID is when you wrote the book. What prompted you to write Unleash Potential?
Well, it was Adam. So I had started because I wanted to be a consultant, but I had no idea how to be a consultant. I thought all of a sudden you just said, I'm a consultant and people will hire you. It does not work that way.
No?
I'm just going to dispel that myth right now.
Okay.
It is hands down one of the hardest things I've ever tried to get going in my professional career. But I had hired him because he also does digital media, and to help me develop my website. Well, through the idea of wanting to be a consultant, I had started, like you, with my notes section on my iPhone. We'd be watching TV and I would just start putting things in my phone, because I'd been in leadership forever, took a step back into being an individual contributor. And my manager at the time, she's like, you've got so much in your head. Have you thought about being a consultant? And that's when I was like, well, I've thought about it, but I have no idea what to go about. And I'd followed a few people on social media and they all had courses. So I thought to myself, okay, I got to have a course. So I first started, and Randy, I probably it was 13 months that would take somebody to go through this course that I built. I go, nobody's going to do that. And B,
Right.
nobody's going to pay me what they probably should pay me to go through 13 months of this leadership. So I continued to whittle it down, and I narrowed it down into 4 modules, which is the 4 key points of the book. And so in talking to Adam, he's like, well, what are you selling? Like, what do we need to work on with this website? And so I told him, he's like, you got a book. And that's when the imposter syndrome kicked in. I was like, I'm not writing a book. I said, everybody writes a book. I don't need to write a book. And lo and behold, it was just me trying to talk myself out of putting that out there because it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so just through a couple of just little seeds, he just planted seeds, just like a good salesperson does,
Yep.
that it started to grow. And then the very next call, he's like, have you thought anything more about it? And I was like, well, I'm not writing a book, but tell me what it would take to write a book. And so that's when he started. And I was like, okay, let's shift. I'm not going to pay you to work on my website. Let's figure out how to write this book. And then that's when he broke it down. And I used the 4 modules. So I had the framework there. So, which was great. It made it a lot simpler to get going. And just through his advice and being able to just to brain dump on the page, don't edit, just go. And that's a good example for some people that when they're starting something new, just go forward and then you can edit it later and just continue. It's that everyday consistent action to take. And that's what it was. It was writing every day. And a couple of times I had even said, well, I'm going on spring break, so let's just postpone this week's call. And he goes, no, we're not going to postpone this week's call because you need accountability. And he was right.
Yep.
And so we talked, and then, through that, it was such a wonderful experience because my kids were home, my wife was home, and you can see the chair behind me. My son was sitting there playing Minecraft or something on his iPad when I typed my last word. And I said, buddy, I turned around, I said, I just finished the book. And so he, in a 12-year-old way, looked up of his iPad, and he's like, you know what, Dad, even if nobody buys it, you did it.
Wow.
And I thought, man, these kids, they say the best things, but there was so much wisdom in that it just, it overwhelmed me in the sense of he just got to see me do something that very few people would do. Is I have a book. And then when the first physical copy to proof came to the door, it was an emotional moment, and not because the book is all this and I had to endure all this hardship. It was an accomplishment. It was doing something and seeing it through from beginning to end. And then now I have a legacy that will live on to them, live on to their children if they choose to read it, and then other people as well. And I remember when I first put the book out, I had a gentleman, he reached out and he bought it and he read through the book, and I got a message on Instagram from him. And he's like, I want you to know I just quit smoking today because of your book, because my dad was a smoker and had passed away. And he's like, I read that and I don't want to leave my kids behind. And I go, that's the impact that you can make, when I didn't think it had anything to do with telling somebody to quit smoking. But that was the impact that he took from that. So I potentially, because of writing this book and sharing my experience with my dad, I potentially saved this man's life and his family from losing their father due to smoking. So you never know the impact that you're going to make with something.
Exactly. So, and that's a great story, because you're right. Everything you do every day, you don't know. Every word you say, every conversation you have could really, really, really matter to somebody, right? And it's like the straw on the camel's back, right? You don't know when the straw is going to break their back. Well, this is good things that you're passing out in the world, but you don't know. These 12 people may not need it at all and just move right on by, but that one little thing may affect somebody in a positive, and you may never know it, right? But
no, and that's why I think everybody needs to write a book.
Yep. Well, it's you got me challenged again. Now I'm gonna go right now. You just go ahead and take over. I'm gonna go start writing.
Okay. All right, Wes. What do we do next?
Yeah. Well, so you started in COVID. Tell me about, because I always find this interesting, and I say this every week with guests if this comes up. that I'm seriously done with that big C word. I really just have had enough of it. But the reason I always keep coming back to it is because let me back up. I am so much better at so many things that wouldn't have happened had we not went through that. Now, would I go back today and not have gone through that? Of course, because people did get sick, people did die. It shut down economies and people lost jobs and livelihoods. So I'm not making light of that part. All I'm saying is that uh, who Randy is, not who I am. The way I go about my business today is a complete turnaround in a lot of areas. Still the concept of being a relationship guy and doing the things that I do, but the way I do it, I would probably continue to do the same old thing the same old way because I was successful at it and that's what I always done. So from that standpoint, um, it was that was a good part of the outcome for me. And I think a lot of people, if they think long enough, will realize that they did gain some good things out of a very bad situation. I assume, obviously, you wrote a book. You started your consulting business. Would you say that some of that may or may not have happened if you didn't have the time and the drastic punch in the nose that whole thing gave us?
I could almost guarantee you none of that would have happened. I mean, the consulting may have happened, but I wouldn't have made the time to write the book. And it gave me the opportunity to do things, and just seeing in the healthcare space and sales in general, and I think in the world in general, we were forced to shift. And there were a lot of people that had wanted to do certain things forever, but never had the courage to do it, whether it was selling a different way, whether it was approaching customers a different way, or again, I'm surrounded by Disney employees. There were a lot of Disney employees that were furloughed that they're like, I'd always wanted to start this cottage business and doing something on the side. Now I have to because I have no income. And they never went back to Disney. And now they have successful businesses wanting to do something that they'd wanted to do forever, and they had to do it. And now they're so happy that they did it. And so that's what I'm grateful for, not for COVID. I'm grateful for the pause that it created for our family. Like, I miss things that we had done as a daily activities as family. We had to slow down. It forced us to all slow down. And we've hopped back on that flywheel that is starting to spin again, almost to the point of out of control, to where it was almost worse than it was before, because now we've created all these opportunities. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here easily talking over, this video platform, which 2 years ago we would have done it, but it probably would have been more clunky. It wouldn't have been as refined as it is. Nobody would have still known what Zoom was.
Right.
So it's created opportunities for people like you and I to connect, which I'm grateful for. So it's that balance of, okay, what's the good that has come out of it, and what is it that you don't want, and focus on the good. That's the big thing. And try to overcome some of those other obstacles that continue to get in our way while we're focusing on the good things.
Yeah, well said. You used the word shift, and I like that word because we made a shift. I use a word quite often, adapt, or be an adapter, and I'd love to hear your take on this, because I think we've kind of touched on it, but I did a lot of adapting, right? But the most important thing is none of the things that I did is as important as I became an adapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing out of this last 2.5 years is I don't see obstacles anymore other than something to you either climb over, climb under, walk around, punch a hole through, but everything is much more adaptable. And I think a lot of people learned, and I'd like your take on this, and I think you've kind of already addressed it, but we've learned things will happen. Who in the world believed? I thought we was watching or living in. I was looking for the director with that little thing that I thought we was in a movie, right? Because this is not really happening. right? It can't be. We went from smooth sailing to world shutting down, not overnight, but close, right?
Pretty
And
close.
so the point is, we came out of that okay, right? I mean, generally speaking, not some people, but generally speaking, and we've learned to adapt. And I think that's the key is that I remind myself is opportunities. And I wrote down shift because I like that term, but adapting, right? There's always opportunities whenever anything changes, good or bad, right? There's always opportunities that develop from a change, right? Some are good, some are bad. Our job is to weed through those and figure and try to not fall into the bad ones and try to accept and take advantage of the good, right?
Right. And it's like you shared it. It's also trying to disconnect the emotion of a situation and figuring out what are the checklist, what's the checklist that's going to get me through. And there's a great book by Marshall Goldsmith called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's a great book because what he's talking to high level C-suite people. He goes, I'm not telling them what to do because they're already at a high level of performance.
Right.
I'm telling them what to stop doing. And I loved that perspective because that's what 2020 and 2021 did. So we won't use the C word. That time frame created, what do I need to stop doing? And that's to stop doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right.
Or if I want better results, what am I going to do differently to accomplish that? And so that's where, to your point, we had to adapt. We had to adapt as a family. Think of the teachers that had to adapt how they teach their students. The students had to adapt how they learned. I mean, yes, they get to learn from a computer every day, but now they've got distance learning that's there. As parents, we became responsible for our children's education. We couldn't pass that on to somebody else. So I think maybe that's the year of adaptability that we can adapt as our term for that, because exactly. It is. And I love that in the sense of shifting to adaptability is so important. And that's a message that we need to continue to carry on because we're going to continue to face hardships. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue to face disappointments. My son's football game, we've had terrible weather just all season. And they've had games canceled. He had a game that he only got to play a half. And we were disappointed. He was disappointed. And I looked at the situation. I thought, here's a great teachable moment. Because I know that it wasn't going to resonate with him at that time. But I was like, buddy, I just hate to break it to you. Life is about how you handle the disappointments, because we have our expectations really high so often. That's why we're disappointed. And how you handle that is what's going to make you different from other people. Do you sob? Do you weep? Do you mope around? Or do you go, it happens. It rained. There's lightning. We can't do anything about it. And that's where we can allow our emotions to get us wrapped around the axle when we can't do anything about it, and being able to separate and say, okay, what's the learning about it? What can we do? How can we overcome this moment to then now take that into something else?
Good stuff. Good point. So let's finish up, Jeff, with maybe go back a little bit to the book here. Easy read. Like I said, I'm okay. Just to prove I wasn't lying, that's where I'm at. I'm halfway through. I just want you to know. Easy read, very to the point, and I think I love the title because you really nailed it with the title. Everything I've read so far, and I think a little bit of circling back to what we've just talked about over the last few minutes is everybody has way more, no matter how successful they may be right now, still have so much unleashed potential within them, right? Right? Some people have a lot more than others, but if the high level of the game, like the C-suite people you're talking about, they're pretty high level, right? But they still got more, right? They still got more. And excuse me, I think that's the real outtake I've got so far from your book is whatever you've accomplished, whatever you are accomplishing, whatever you think you've accomplished, man, just get out of your own way because there's more, right?
Right. There's always more. And the 4 key points, it's not an instruction manual, but the one thing that they can take from it, even without reading, is the critical areas that I focus on are it's that internal and external communication. So what do you say to yourself and what do you say to others? That has a huge impact on the results because you can program yourself and your subconscious. The second part is knowing your strengths and weaknesses. So it's that self-awareness. You talked about it earlier. You know that you're a checklist person. That's a strength. That's going to help you accomplish goals. It's going to help you overcome weaknesses. And where in this age, everybody's like, just focus on your strengths. I'm a firm believer because I've seen it firsthand where if I'm not focused on a weakness, that's capping my potential. I will never go further than here if I don't work on something that's down here. So I can continue to push everything forward that way. The next thing is around self-development. Is a critical part is we can't continue to delegate our own self-development. Just like you do, you read, you listen to podcasts, you put on a show, learning from other people and then sharing that with others. There's so many free resources. Nobody has an excuse to say, well, my boss never prepared me. Right. And then also the importance of community. That's all part of self-development is who you plug into. And then the last one is just setting the proper course, setting a plan. Doesn't have to be complicated. I've been a part in corporate America where there's been very intricate, specific year-long goals and plans that they put in place that you spend 2 weeks putting it together and then you never look at it again right. until the end of the year because you just got busy doing all your things. So what good was that? So setting a good, proper course that you can follow. And I get a lot of those from just the learnings that I've had over the years and books that I've read and being able just to apply all of those things, like you said, and hopefully a very simple form that tells stories, personal life stories of mine of how I've been able to work through those 4 key points.
Yeah, that is, and maybe we'll finish with this because you've been very kind with your time, but I thought about the other day, I think I did a post the other day and talked about, you got to dream, right? You got to dream and think about what it is you want to do. And then you got to plan. But if you dream and you plan, that's all great. It's a whole lot of good stuff wrote down, but if you don't execute, it's a dream and a plan. That's all it is, right? And then as I was thinking about that, and after the fact, I added 1/4 to that is you have to believe. After all of that, you have to dream it, you have to plan it, take execution or action or act, but you got to believe, man. If you don't believe in yourself, and you got it, and don't believe with every ounce of whatever you have in you that I am going to be successful. I will adapt if I need to. I will make the turns and the cuts and the moves on the football field, if you will. At some point or another, you're not going to reach the unleashed potential, right?
That was a message that I realized because I got into a little pity party over the weekend, just because success isn't going where I want it to go in the time frame that I want it to go. And I realized that all the anxiety was coming from I stopped believing in myself that I was going to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, and I was working out. And so it means a lot that you shared that today, because that's so critical. And that's that word that comes out of your mouth and what you program right. yourself. And I had gotten off course in believing. So thank you for that.
Well, you of course. And you're right. The most important person to believe in you, period, is yourself, right? You can want other people, and it's important that your wife or friends or bosses or colleagues believe in you. But that's very secondary in my mind to you. You still have got to believe in yourself, because if you don't have that, you won't be your head won't be on a swivel looking for opportunities, right? You won't be preparing for and ready to adapt if you just don't have that belief.
And right.
So well said, my friend. Well, listen, Jeff, parting words. What did we miss today? Wes always tells me I missed something, so he always pops. Look at him. He's a magician. I
thought it said Shaq for a second.
Well, no, Shaq wouldn't fit on this screen. He's way bigger than us. But what's the should ask question that I missed? Anything?
I don't think anything, Randy. When I do these, I'm just so grateful that you've given me the opportunity. So I'm appreciative that we've been able to share some things and thoughts that you and I have, and being able to, hopefully make an impact on people that watch this now and later.
Yeah. Well, and it will. And I can tell you, We've been blessed on our show to have had some incredibly great guests, including now we can include you, which was awesome, and we've got a lineup of some super guests coming up. And the one thing is, I always think about what do they bring something to the table that's helpful to people, and and the beautiful thing with doing this show, hosting this show with Wes doing all the important stuff, I just stand here and talk a little bit, is that I always am the big winner because I always get to learn something new every single show. Talking like you, I follow you, you follow me on social media. We
Mhm.
had a great conversation for 45 minutes or whatever the other day, which was awesome. I'm sure we'll have more, but the amount of people that you bring into your environment that bring positive and they bring change, they bring different ideas is 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 second to none, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's just the more you can pour into each other and be genuine and uplifting and show gratitude, it's contagious. It's going to make somebody's day that day, whether, like we talked about earlier, whether you think it will or not, it will.
Yep, exactly, exactly. Jeff, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you as
Okay,
well.
you got it, my friend. We will chat soon and keep doing what you do. Keep being amazing.
All right. You too.
All right. Cheers, my friend. All right. There you was, Jeff Forrester. I'll tell you what, you were not watching. You were not watching if you didn't dig that stuff. That was some really, really good stuff. And so thank you, Jeff, for being on. I appreciated it. I learned a lot. I made notes, tried to pretend like I wasn't because I wouldn't want to be the attentive host, right? But a lot of notes from Jeff today. Read his book. Very, very good book. You want to read it. So what are we doing next week? Building Wins again. And we have number 4 visit from somebody who's been an incredible friend of the show, an incredible friend of Wes and I's. Ben Gay III is going to be on for his 4th appearance. And we're going to have some chats about everything sales oriented, life oriented, some stories. Because I'll tell you one thing, Ben has more stories than we have hours to produce. It's amazing to listen to the man. He is a true living legend. And so look forward to that next week. And until then, remember this: live it, love it, own it. We talk about that a lot. And if you don't follow anything that Randy says, if you don't follow anything, love what you do and do what you love. And while you're at it, make today your best day ever. Till tomorrow. Cheers, my friends.